Washington, D.C. Director for March for Our Rights. It is an honor to share the stage with 4 other empowered women. On this panel, we will be breaking down the stereotypes between gun ownership and women. So joining me on this panel is Paulina, who is a United States Air Force veteran, and she is currently the Director of Hispanic Engagement for Turning Point USA. And we have Valentine, who is the creator of the lifestyle blog Style Me Tactical, which is committed to encouraging women to be stylish and self-reliant. She is also the host of Not Your Average Gun Girls podcast. And then we have Cheryl Todd. She is a self-described serial entrepreneur. She is the owner of AZFirearms.com, Pot of Gold Estate Auctions, and both owner and co-host of Gun Freedom Radio. Lexy Higgins is the manager of political and legislative activities for the NRA's, ILA's grassroots program and campaign field operations. Thank you guys for joining me. So since all of you come from different backgrounds and experiences, can you share what made you want to become a Second Amendment activist?
I guess I'll go first. So for me, I don't want to say too much because I have a speech coming up after this. But for me, what it really was is I had a home invasion experience that I experienced, obviously. But at the time, I didn't own a firearm, so it wasn't until probably about 2 years later when I got my concealed carry that I felt that I had the ability to protect myself again. And I could actually sleep well for the first time in a really long time. I realized when I started using my social media to shed light on the fact that 1, women can shoot, 2, that we should be using firearms to protect ourselves, and 3, that the Second Amendment was a woman's right and ability to really defend ourselves even in the playing field. I realized that companies didn't want to work with me. So it was that I said, this is a problem. We should be encouraging women, especially in the era of the Me Too movement, to be protecting themselves, and why not do it via the firearm industry? So that's really essentially how I became a Second Amendment advocate.
So for me, I didn't have any kind of story. It was mainly a way for me to learn how to defend myself. My husband came home one day and said, I want to get a gun for home defense, and I had no issue with that, and I decided that I'm going to figure out if you're going to have a gun in the home. I need to learn how to use it. I need to know what this can and can't do if I would ever need to use it to defend my home or self. So I decided I was going to start Style Me Tactical to kind of document that journey as a female gun owner getting into that. And the more I learned about it, the more I realized that like having a firearm as a tool to defend myself is my greatest tool and equalizer against a threat that's bigger and stronger than me. And I realized from there that, I became more and more passionate about wanting to support and be an advocate for the Second Amendment, because as I read it and learned a lot more about it, I realized that, it's something that we need to stand up for, and especially as women.
Absolutely. So I'm a wife, I'm a mom, and I'm a grandma. So everything for me kind of takes that legacy view. So I understand that what I do in my lifetime intimately and very strongly impacts my daughter's life. And so as she has learned how to grow up and how to be a wife herself and a mom herself, now that's going to impact my granddaughter's life. And so not only the normal stuff listen to me, I'm buying into the other side, right? Not only the stuff that all moms teach their daughters about how to grow up and how to be an adult in this world, but also understanding our Constitution. You would be shocked if you stopped and realized how few people have ever even read the Constitution. It takes all of about an hour and a half to read. And then the 27 words that make up the Second Amendment, how long does that take to read? And how many people have actually read it and studied it and understand it? Well, that's what our family has decided to do, because we understand that our life is temporary, but what we do in it has infinite reverberations into the future. So for me, it is that legacy piece and realizing I am a bridge from our founding fathers to the future generations, and whatever I do or don't do in my lifetime is going to impact the future.
Oh, all right. So I grew up around firearms. My father was a hunter, kept firearms in the home for self-defense. So from a very young age, I was taught how to be safe and responsible around firearms. oftentimes with my parents' permission as I was younger and as I grew older and started working on political campaigns and traveling not only around Virginia, but around the country. I found that it was very important for me as a young female, often traveling by myself, to be able to have a way to defend myself, when I was on and off the clock, all over the place.
Thank you guys, those were very good answers. So most colleges don't have campus carry, unfortunately. So realistically, what are some ways that young women, such as myself and some other young women in the audience, what are some ways that they can defend themselves on campus? Such as the student from South Carolina who unfortunately was killed leaving bars around her campus, and she thought that it was an Uber she was getting into. So what are some ways that young women like that can defend themselves without relying on a gun, or if a student can protect herself on campus and it's not a campus carry campus? How can they defend themselves like that?
I know that it depends on the state, so I get this question a lot actually at the Turning Point conferences. So I recommend, if you can't have a taser, because in some states a taser is considered a deadly weapon, which is really stupid. I suggest that they get Kubotons, but frankly, if you have a campus that's a no-carry campus, I had a campus like that and I carried anyways, because I'm not going to be a statistic, period.
One of the things that, I talk about on my platforms is, being prepared. It's something that I'm passionate about for all women and really all people to just kind of get into that mindset that, evil exists and that you need to prepare yourself. And I think one of the easiest and simplest things for anybody, but, focusing on students in college campuses, is understanding situational awareness. That is like one of the foundations of just kind of being prepared. And if they can kind of learn that, I think a lot of people just don't think about it that way. And we're so involved in our phones that, everyone's walking around with their heads down. Just take your head out of your phone and start paying attention to what's happening around you. I think that's one of the simplest things that they can start doing, and then moving into, problem God, getting into some physical aspects that if you were to get attacked, you do have some kind of maneuvers that you can use, because I know, campuses aren't allowing firearms, but back to what Anna said, find out what your school will allow. Mace, pepper spray, taser, stun gun, Kubotons, little things like that. That could at least help you. And, if you can't do that, then you gotta go back to the situational awareness. You gotta use your mind.
So educate yourself.
Yes.
Absolutely, and to just agree with that and piggyback on that, our most powerful weapon we carry around at the top of our neck, right? Our intellect, our awareness, that sort of thing. And again, with me, with always the long view, the legacy view is, you do have to learn these things and practice these things in the immediacy, but also get involved in whatever ways it takes, so that even while you're in school, maybe you aren't going to be able to enjoy the ability to, protect and save your own life. Perhaps the next generation coming up behind you would be able to, because you've involved yourself and gotten campus carry, right? So often people use this phraseology, well, college kids this and college kids that. Well, I just last year got my master's degree. So I was not a college kid, right? So, but I'm treated like one. On one side of the sidewalk, I have all of my training, I have all of my morals that I'm not gonna, needlessly harm others or purposely harm others. The minute I step across that imaginary line and now I'm on a college campus, all of that goes out the window. And now it's all about this tool, right? That some people, they just can't get past the idea that some use for harm. Somehow they can't embrace, they can't hold two thoughts in their head at the same time and realize that that is a life-saving tool. So I would say get involved and help change the system.
I think these ladies who went before me did a pretty good job of answering the questions. I don't have much to add, but I will just say, make sure that you develop a plan. Make sure that not only, are you making sure that you are aware when you're present in situations, but make sure that you are familiar enough with where you are going ahead of time. make sure that, you know, if I know I'm going to a strange place, do a little bit of homework so you're more familiar than, you know, just having to be in a situation to react. Although oftentimes you can't prepare for everything. So making sure that you do have some sort of exit strategy if you were, God forbid, to need one. And then, you know, education is absolutely key. Making sure that not only are you educating yourself, but educating your fellow students and the student government. A lot of times, you know, some of these campus carry proposals can start on campus, can start with students making enough noise and saying, this is something that we want. Here are some statistics. There are a number of states that have had campus carry for years where there have been no incidences of firearms being used in a malicious way, and oftentimes there are some stats that are not necessarily very easy to get a hold of, which can to show examples of where firearms have been used as a deterrent against some sort of crime. So educate yourself and educate your fellow student body. And, you know, talking about the long game here, you may not be able to enjoy your hard work, but looking at future generations of students, they will. And just kind of keep that in mind while you're temporarily on that campus, you can have an impact for future generations.
So statistics are showing that female gun ownership is on the rise, and a lot of that has to do with the need for self-defense. But we all know, everyone here in the room knows, that there is a big opposition to this. So what would your argument be to a liberal man or woman telling you that you don't need a gun for self-protection, that is just a recipe for disaster, you don't need a gun?
Biologically, men and women are created differently. There's XXXY, sometimes anomalies. Therefore, you're going to be producing more testosterone, meaning you're more stronger than me. At 1911 is faster than 911. Therefore, I'm going to use my firearm to defend myself, period.
Amen. I mean, it's the same thing. It goes back to, it's to anyone. Who are you to tell me what I need and don't need? You know, that's my decision. It's no one else's. And, you know, we are made biologically different. You are stronger. Most of the attackers are men against women, and they're going to be bigger, they're going to be stronger. And it gives me the opportunity to level the playing field and defend myself and my home and my family against a threat. And that is my decision, and if you don't like it, that's your decision. But I want to be able to defend myself, and I'm choosing the firearm to do that.
Absolutely. So a statistic that so many people don't know is that 2.5 million times a year, people use firearms to protect, defend, and save lives. And 200,000 times a year, a woman prevents a sexual assault. Why? Because she was armed. I would want to be on that side of the statistics. Which, by the way, the other side, when they want to talk about gun violence, right? Why is it just gun violence? Violence is violence. We don't have to specifically say, well, if it's knife violence, or if it's choking violence, or if it's, you know. They include those numbers in their big number. So they just want to call it gun violence without delineating and understanding that what you want to call violence saved lives. So that's the side I want to be on in those statistics.
Absolutely. I mean, I would say that a firearm is a great equalizer. It's the greatest equalizer we can have as females against an attacker, male or female, who may be stronger or faster than us. And if you as an individual do not want to carry a firearm, do not want to have a firearm, that is your choice, but it is my choice to be able to have a firearm to defend myself and my family.
That's great. So has there been a time as female gun owners that you've experienced some kind of gender bias? I know it's a term that the left likes to talk about a lot, but I think that is something important to talk about as female Second Amendment activists. I know a story I kind of like to joke about is going to the range with a male friend of mine, and the guys who worked at the range all assumed that I had never shot before, that it was a guy friend of mine who had never shot in his life, and they were all surprised when I took out my range card and he didn't even have one, and it was kind of funny. So if you guys have any little stories like that,
I
that's kind of interesting.
I think for me, people automatically assume because I was in the military, mind you, the Air Force is its own beast. So they assume that I have, this extensive weapons training. I actually got that from my husband, and he's back there, so raising your hand again. The idea actually was able to give me more training on firearms than I actually experienced when I was in the military, which for me, going in and then becoming essentially an activist on social media, what I realized is I actually got more of advice from other women about fitting into this mold of what it means to be someone who's an advocate for the Second Amendment, or how I should dress, or how I should look. So if you are a woman and you're not encouraging other women to shoot, you have a problem. If you're talking shit, excuse my language, but on social media, you have a problem. I'm actually going out and doing something, so instead of bumping your gums and like typing on really, profusely on the keyboard, I'm going and encourage other women to do it, because you're not helping anyone, you're not helping the movement, you're not helping the Second Amendment by boxing other women into these standards. Sorry, rant. I digress.
I think, I have found just within the Second Amendment community and being a woman that community of Second Amendment women is so welcoming. We're so supportive of one another, and I think that's great. And one of the things that I do with Sally Tacticals, I show, part of my journey was also concealed carry. And once I started fitting that into my life, I was like, you know what? I can still like my clothes, I can still dress the way I want, and I'm gonna make this work my way. So I started sharing that, and one of the ways I did that, I shared it through my blog, but I also started sharing that on social media. And what I noticed is I got a lot more flack on social media from like the keyboard warriors that were saying, oh, you don't know what you're doing, you're too small to carry, you're carrying in the wrong place, all these things. They weren't providing me any constructive, criticism to say, this is what you can do to do it better. They don't know what I'm doing outside of that square picture. They don't know that I'm going to the range. They don't know that I'm training and that I'm practicing. They just want to sit behind there and say, look at this photo, you're a girl with a gun, you don't know anything.
Wow. I suppose I fill a unique place in the firearms community because my husband and I own a firearms store, AZFirearms. And so I really have not been disenfranchised in any way. And if I were to try to pick some example, I would say it's the other side of the argument that wants to tell us that, we're too frail or something. So if I'm too frail to handle this tool, this little metal tool, then how am I not too frail to fight off a 6 foot whatever guy or attacker?
That's a great point.
Right, there's no logic to it whatsoever. So where they would want to disenfranchise me, I want to educate them. So if that's where they want to start the conversation, I'm cool with that, because if they wanted to put me in a victim mindset, that's not going to work with me. I've just never thought that way. I just always try to figure out, well, clearly they're not understanding this. I'm a natural born teacher, so I'm like, how can I help you better understand? And some people they aren't really seeking to understand, and those ones we just move past. So.
Sure, that's fair. I would say that the biggest kind of bias came from some of my friends, even in the firearms community, believe it or not, whenever I got pregnant with my son. Knowing that I'm a firearms owner, they said, well, what are you going to do with your guns? What do you mean, what am I going to do with my guns? I'm going to keep them. Yes, I'm going to change the way we store them because, my husband and I can have a different level of access than my newborn child. So we altered our storage in our home, but we certainly didn't get rid of any firearms. And so that was a very surprising question for me to even be asked. So I say that's probably the biggest bias that I encountered recently.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point to bring up, all of you guys. Now, what would your advice be to young women looking to get more involved in Second Amendment activism?
I'd say contact the organization that you work with, March for Our Rights. Great cause, great organization. The NRA has safety courses that they provide lists of. And then also going out to your local shooting range. I would say that until you get comfortable, don't really look to social media, because there can be people that are on social media that are doing things completely wrong. So I wouldn't say to go to social media like Instagram. Don't get your education through Instagram. There's a ton of information on the internet, and you have 100% access to it through your phones. So if you're embarrassed to ask it first, you can always use that as your first tool, and then, you know, go to a gun range and see if there's someone that you can get a safety course through, especially when you're going for your concealed carry. That would be my advice. Again, stay away from the social media people. Sometimes, you know, you will learn things the wrong way on social media. Once you learn it, it's hard to break the habit.
Yeah, I think, you know, looking to local organizations and chapters that are supporting the Second Amendment and are doing things that you're interested in, reaching out to those people and finding out how you can get involved. And, you know, with social media, it is a great platform. So if you are passionate about it, start using it to start talking about, you know, what you want to express when it comes to the Second Amendment and getting your voice out there and kind of getting into your lane and start advocating for the different chapters that you want to be a part of and things like that.
I agree 100% with where to get tapped into, but I think also the mindset of it, I think the word activist has almost a scary sound to people now, but advocate, right, or ambassador. If I'm an advocate for something, then I want to help bring those messages forward. I'm not, you know, out storming the streets with, you know, crazy costumes on and that sort of thing. And if I'm an ambassador, then I want to represent my community well.
That's an interesting point.
Thank you.
Yeah, I like that.
And so for me, I have tapped into the well-armed woman, right? There's a girl with a gun. So if you want to say things specifically about, you know, female-forward organizations, but there's also in Arizona, where I'm from, the Arizona Citizens Defense League. They are the watchmen on the wall and the guard dogs in the court. They are actually doing the work to make sure that the bills that come through, there's not something tucked in there that we're not noticing, right? And then they're writing good laws. And so that's why Arizona is one of the most free states in the nation. And so if you can volunteer with them and learn more about, well, how do they do what they do, then that's going to make you more effective in your abilities to be either an activist, an advocate, or an ambassador.
Sure. No, I think that's an excellent point. I was actually going to bring up the well-armed women. I'm glad that you did. But just get involved. Just ask questions. Because most folks in the firearms community that are part of gun clubs, that are part of these different organizations, genuinely want to help you. And they want to teach you. Again, stay off the internet, stay off social media. But if you have a face-to-face interaction and you say, hey, I don't really know, you know, what I'm doing here. I'm not very comfortable, but I want to learn. I want to become more comfortable. I want to learn how to operate this firearm so that I can take courses so that I can be better prepared to defend myself in my home. You will find no shortage of individuals willing to help you if you just ask the question.
Well, thank you so much, you guys. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Self-explaining why you should own firearms.
Agree.
One thing that we've been talking about a lot this weekend, just being around other patriot-minded people, other people that are tapped into that advocacy with Second Amendment specifically, is trying to listen to the other side better. Not the big messaging that's trying to suck other people in, but the individual people who are at threat of being sucked into the vortex, right? So what so many of them, there's a statistic out there that gets thrown around all the time that 90% or whatever the number is of American citizens believe we should have stronger gun laws. Well, I always think, stronger than what? Why don't you tell me what some of them are, right? That can be a challenging approach, but that's what's going on in my mind. But then it takes me to my next step, which is, I think the sweet spot is, what are they actually saying? They're saying, I'm afraid. I want to feel safer. And so that is an entry point with everything that these ladies have said, right? How do I feel safer? Well, we have so many techniques. We have, you know, even the first time somebody carries a firearm on their body, it feels this big, right? And so with Style Me Tactical, you're helping people understand how you can carry it where it's very truly concealed. Those kinds of things. So maybe do a better job of really listening behind the rhetoric and speaking to the actual individual and meeting them at their point of need.
And that's something we talked about last night, Cheryl, about relating to the other side, understanding their point of view. And I know for me, I'm from the Parkland area, so when I talk to people from the other side, people from March for Our Lives, and it's not necessarily like trying to persuade them or tell them all these facts, it's more listening to their point of view and just trying to relate to them, because we're all people at the end of the day, and just like understanding their point of view, their side. And Emily, I mean, your blog and everyone, all women love fashion for the most part. It's just something relatable, and so for a lot of young women, I'm sure, especially on the left, guns are a manly thing, so when you
But you can't have them both, right? That's
Yeah.
kind of how it is.
So I'm sure that appeals to a lot of young women. So it's just about relating and understanding people as humans.
Exactly, and it's just kind of getting it, it's what, everyone has said, it's just relating and trying to understand it. And kind of maybe, because we know coming from, where we stand and what we believe in, we can direct and ask them the questions to get to kind of like the root to help them understand a little bit better as to why it's important to us and why we don't need to be convincing anyone because it's our choice, and if you don't agree, that's fine, but we can just kind of help bridge that gap and that understanding.
Yeah, exactly.
Just to echo that point, I think it was an excellent one. Oftentimes we approach conversations with folks on the other side of this debate with an effort to completely change their mind. And oftentimes we end up frustrated because it doesn't happen in one conversation. And so what I would say is to approach your conversations with folks who are willing to listen, because not everybody's going to be willing to listen. But if you are in a situation where you can have a genuine conversation, really challenge them to explain to you, okay, you want stronger background checks. What kind of background checks do we have now? Ask them questions to get them to either tell you what they already know, or more often than not, they will tell you what they don't know. And then you can encourage them to do more research on their own. I always say we do our NRA University program where we travel around the country and speak to college students. And I always say in my presentation, don't take my word for any of this. Here are my sources. You can go look at the data. You can go look and see exactly where we're getting this information from and draw your own conclusions, because we do have a lot of statistics and a lot of truth on our side, and it's just about making sure that they can recognize that for themselves.
Great. Well, thank you guys for being here. Thank you, everyone.